All you new rappers don't be talking about shit except doing drugs. Wonder how you got a name, damn. Sippin' lean, taking E, Percocet, purple drinks, Xanax, everything sound the same. Fuck, bunch of drug addicts in the house of pain. Woo, hope you niggas suffer till you pop a vein, yeah. This should make your mother wanna ovulate, yeah. This should make a doctors wanna stop the train. Spend the Louis Prada, don't you? Back when I was broke and no one knew me. I couldn't afford it, and now that I got the money, I don't even want this shit, cause it ain't for me. I always been myself, you don't know me. Yeah, I was so depressed, I was lonely.
How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another build video. The first one for Borderlands 4, and being for Deadeye Vex, a sniper-focused Vex build, focused on utilizing Blood Shot to dump as much damage into a single shot as possible, so that we can one-shot as many things as possible, including a majority of bosses. Even already, without optimal gear yet, this build can hit over 600,000 damage, and I'm pushing hard to get to that million. But before jumping into the build, I'm super excited to announce that I've partnered up with Mobalytics. Mobalytics is a great platform that I've genuinely been using for years, all the way since back in my League days. Mobalytics hosts user-created guides for all sorts of games, and as of recently, now hosts Borderlands 4. If you'd like to see the entire write-up for this build, and any of my future builds as well, it'll be over there with a link in the description and the pinned comment. It's a very cool platform. I'm excited that they've got BL4 up there now. I love writing stuff up in documents, and now I've got a very easy way and very clean way of doing that and sharing it all with you guys. But yeah, with that being said, let's get on into things here. Now, starting out here, this is a majority green tree build, and we're actually going to start down here to talk about Blood Shot. What this tool does is, after using a rep kit, the next gunshot fired from Vex becomes a Blood Shot, converting the damage it deals into kinetic damage and dealing bonus damage based on her current health. This bonus damage is 50% of her current HP. And now we get a little bit technical, and I'm going to whip a damage formula up on the screen, because the way that Blood Shot works is it is just adding a flat value, of course, based on 50% of our HP value. If you've seen my previous damage formula video, and I mean, if you're looking at this damage formula now, you'll notice that a lot of stuff in this game is simply additive. A lot of our gun damage or weapon damage or elemental damage, any damage is just additive with each other. This means that unlike BL3, we don't really get too many super crazy numbers coming out of our damage formula when we maximize it. Damage is just simply damage. However, with all of our damages mostly being percentages, Blood Shot is incredibly good because it is just a flat value. With enough HP, this is effectively adding multiple guns worths of damage onto your gunshot. The only thing that notably Blood Shot does not benefit from is amp. It does not feed into our amp damage, which is a shame because amp damage is one of the few multiplicative things in this game, but this is still a lot of base damage being added into our formula, with all of our other buffs benefiting it. However, very notably with this, it also gets our skill damage, and because it's converting our damage dealt into kinetic damage, and effectively converting all of our damage into this Blood Shot formula, that means that skill is being added as a damage modifier on top of everything whenever we have a Blood Shot active. This is literally just giving us another way to buff our damage, which is incredibly nice. Now, sticking in this branch and coming down to Blood is Power, we also grab this, as it is giving us bonus kinetic damage based on our current lifesteal as long as our health is full. This bonus is 300%, where we get 10% from Leeching Attunement, and another 10 to 20% for Essence Leech, being 20% when our action skill is active, for a total of 30%, which Blood is Power converts to a 90% bonus kinetic damage. Now, since, as you saw in our formula, Blood Shot is getting added to our base damage, this does mean that this bonus element actually does benefit pretty heavily from Blood is Power, taking a percentage of the base damage alongside our Blood Shot damage and giving us 90% of that, which then of course goes through the rest of our formula, the same way that base elements have always done. Now for the rest of this tree, we grab Grave Sights, being a kill skill that on kill grants a stack of 15% crit damage and 15% gun handling, stacking up to 3 times, and similarly Grave Implements, being the same thing except 20% gun damage stacking 3 times. We also grab Material Components, giving a 35% damage buff to our kinetic damage and a 20% to our kinetic status effect damage, which is incredibly nice because we are in fact taking bleed, where a gun and still critical hits have a chance to apply bleed, causing kinetic status event damage over time for a duration. This duration is 4 seconds, the damage is 30% of our gun damage per second, with a 50% chance and stacking up to 20 times. Now I'm sure some of you have seen some crazy stuff with bleed, but that is not the same interaction that this build is using with bleed. We are simply just using bleed as a little bit of extra damage, a little bit of extra sauce, to let us still technically one-shot some tougher health bars. In the full bleed builds that are using bleed to get some very crazy damage numbers, you're using a specific knife that makes all damage dealt to the target impacted by that knife critically hit. This is making bleed snowball and stack off of itself, leading to those crazy damage numbers. We do still have bleed. You could still grab one of those knives, and you could melt bosses even quicker than I have been with your bleeds. But I didn't want to focus too much on this interaction for this build, as one, I just think Bloodshot is a very cool skill, and I wanted to make sure I let it shine here. And two, very likely that crit interaction is going to get nerfed or changed. But in short, this is very nice for helping us melt down super big health bars, as the damage that we're dealing to trigger these bleeds is a lot, so the bleed itself is hitting pretty hard. Now moving back into our branch, the only other thing to talk about here is Ars Arcana, where Vex just simply gains 40% still damage. As mentioned earlier, Bloodshot makes our entire damage formula benefit from still damage, so this is an incredibly good skill, which we are taking over top of Grave Vitality. Grave Vitality would give us more max HP, which does of course benefit Bloodshot, but even at max stacks, it is not more of a benefit than Ars Arcana is. Because along with that, Ars Arcana actually does benefit Blood is Power as well, as still damage does just seem to benefit bonus elements in this game, meaning we get a lot of value out of this. Now we do have one more point left over, and realistically it could go anywhere. However, I tend to just throw it into Grave Power, giving us another stack on our kill skills. Effectively, this single point is giving us 20% gun damage and 15% critical hit damage. Now the final 5 points are over in Red Tree, where we're grabbing Blood is Magic, where Vex deals increased action still damage the higher her health, being 35% at full health. Now you could actually take enchantment as well here, which is another bonus element, maxing out at 37.5%, and honestly, it does actually give you a little bit more damage when it's active. This is only active while your action still is active. This may be 2.5-ish% less damage, but it is active as long as you are healing incredibly well, and this build does heal incredibly well. So really, it's up to you where you want to put your points. I do tend to find personally Blood is Magic feels just that much more consistent to me. And finally, we'll talk about our skill. I'm sure you've noticed the big ass wings. We are using Incarnate, and honestly, we're mostly using Incarnate just because of Blood is Power and Essence Leech, where while it's active, we're getting an additional 10% lifesteal, which converts to 30% more damage on our bonus element through Blood is Power. But as well, it lets us grab Witchy Trigger Finger, which when dealing damage with Eldritch Blast or Phase Explosion, we get a stack of Witchy Trigger Finger, stacking up to 3 times and giving us 15% gun damage per stack. Also worth mentioning, we actually do not take our capstone, as the capstone that we get is Heart Piercer, where Eldritch Blast now no longer has a cooldown, instead sacrificing our health on use and becoming a wave that deals damage and heals allies that it hits. It also gains bonus damage and healing depending on the amount of health that you've sacrificed. Now the issue with this is it's a complete inverse synergy with Bloodshot. Bloodshot is 50% of our current HP, which means the lower HP we are, the lower Bloodshot damage we do. We don't want to be taking damage. This capstone would just be making us take more damage, and really for not giving us too much in return. Now we'll head on over to our gear, and starting out with our class mod, the Undead Eye. Killing an enemy with a sniper rifle will trigger a bloodshot. Critically hitting an enemy with a sniper rifle has a 33% chance to trigger a bloodshot. This just lets us much more consistently keep bloodshot active. Especially during mobbing, this means that we don't just have to perpetually be spamming our rep kit nearly as much, which is incredibly nice. Along with that, the stills that it can roll are incredibly nice, though ideally you do just want as many points into bloodshot as possible. However, the other stills that I actually rolled on here are pretty nice as well, being Guns and Needles, which gives me some rep kit cooldown on kill, and Infernal Sum, giving critical hit damage on enemies that have 2/3 or less of their health remaining. And as for the passives, really you just want damage that is going to be helping you. I'm not entirely sure all the passives that this can roll, but here I did get 45% sniper rifle damage, which is incredibly nice. Now our shield, which is a pretty big piece of our setup here, where it's a shield that has no capacity, but when equipped grants 7,436 health, 372 health regeneration per second, and reduces the damage taken by 33%. Of course, this is incredibly nice because this is buffing the hell out of Blood Shot. This lets us have an even higher max HP pool to pull from, which means that flat damage value is even bigger. Along with that, the health regen and damage reduction is incredibly helpful for helping us keep topped up so that we can keep pumping out consistent damage. Now for our enhancement, I don't have the enhancement that I want yet. Ideally, you do want a Jacob's enhancement, specifically the one that I believe gives you auto crit chance with Jacob's parts, because auto crit is a very nice stat for us to have. Unfortunately, I don't have the points to really get it in the tree right now, which does make some bosses that have tougher crits a little bit tougher, but also some bosses like Back Hive just don't even have crits in general. So I do highly recommend trying to get auto crit in as much of your gear as possible, as well as if you have one of those auto crit knives, it could definitely help for bosses like that. But of course, the passives that you're looking for here is just crit damage and damage in general. The reason I'm using this order enhancement is because it has sniper rifle damage and sniper rifle crit damage on it, which that alone is enough for me to find this to be worth it. Now, there's not really too much to say on the ordnance. Again, as I've mentioned, that crit knife is probably going to be the best thing you can have right now, or you just go for some sort of damage ordnance. Now, the rep kit is pretty big here, as you really want to get that amp on there. Amp, as I mentioned, is one of the very few multiplicative sources of damage in BL4 right now. So this means that we are getting a 200% multiplier on top of our base damage. This does not apply onto Blood Shot. However, this is still a huge modifier for us to be having. And you're going to be using your rep kit a lot anyways to be triggering Blood Shot, especially for bossing. This is just going to make that potential that much higher. Now, I think my ideal rep kit here is the order, as it gives the rep kit 2 charges. And again, we're spamming rep kit a lot. It's very nice to have those charges. Amp is an absolute necessity, and if you're able to, I think the best secondary would be Enrage, which gives you another 30% damage, though does make you take a little bit more damage for the duration. However, I think that would be ideal for bossing, but there's a legendary called the Triple Bypass that has 3 charges and has a chance on use to recharge a charge. If you get one of those with Amp on it, that could be incredibly good for mobbing. Now, onto our firmware. The big one I'm trying to complete here is Deadeye, which I actually only just got the second piece to this. All the clips that you have seen so far will have been without the second Deadeye active, but Deadeye gives us accuracy for the tier 1, 25% crit damage for the tier 2, and on the tier 3, every crit grants 15% crit damage, stacking up to 5 times. Now, firmware can roll on all of your gear here, meaning that you actually get 5 slots for it, so we can max out Deadeye, and then for our secondary, the one I'm shooting for is Trick Shot, which will give us 5% reload speed, and then at the tier 2, 10% crit damage. And then for our weapons, of course, you just want anything that is super hard hitting and matching what we're doing. The 2 guns I've been using almost more than anything has been the Truck, being just an incredibly good high damage sniper. Though to note with this, it can actually roll different parts on it, and one of the parts is a rocket that can hit for incredibly hard, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And our main bossing gun is the Ballista, firing a slow-moving projectile with a lot of projectiles swirling around it. I'm sure you may be able to tell why this gun is so good for bossing. A lot of projectiles, a lot of crits, a lot of bleed. Along with that, it has a shotgun alt fire, which can be very good if you're ever in close quarters, as this does actually still count as being a sniper kill, which means that Undead Eye can proc on the shotgun as well, re-triggering Blood Shot on it. Now finally here, let's quickly talk about specializations. I think the most important skills here to have is one shot, one kill, giving you overkill damage on your next shot, in the zone, giving you a stacking gun damage and crit damage bonus the longer that you're ADS'd, and contamination, where critical hits grant you increased status effect application chance. However, a great option for mobbing would also be overkill, where on critical kill, enemies will explode into still damage. But yeah, that's gonna about do it for Blood Shot Vex. If you're a sniper fan looking for a build to just pump some heads in BO4, then this is definitely the build for you. And just to mention it again, if you would like to read the entire write-up for this build, that will be linked down in the description below and in the pinned comment. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. And just below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. I'll be live right after this video goes up right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there'll be a link to down in the description below. And just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.